Lawmakers here have historically been unified in their support for Israel. Now, Republicans say they're concerned with the growth of anti-Israel rhetoric from their Democratic colleagues.
Israel's a democracy. Hamas is a terrorist group.
But not all lawmakers agree.
Well, I think the squad used to be a fringe element of the Democratic Party when it comes to Israel. Probably still are. But more and more Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Chris Murphy are openly siding with this moral equivalency argument that there's problems on both sides.
Senator Lindsey Graham tells CBN News he's shocked by the number of Democrats reluctant to firmly stand with Israel.
When the Iranians and Hamas hear Democratic members of Congress and the Senate basically seeing no difference between Israel and Hamas, it only incentivizes more violence.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell adds when it comes to Israel and Hamas, they play by very different rules.
When Israel strikes, for example, they call the building and say, please get out of the building because we're about to attack it in order to minimize civilian casualties. Hamas is lobbing rockets into Israel to kill civilians. There is no moral equivalency here.
Both senators support Israel defending itself.
If I were Israel, I would do whatever necessary to diminish Hamas's ability to do this a second time. So President Biden has been cautious about pushing a ceasefire too aggressively. The biggest winner of a ceasefire right now would be Hamas.
Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who has Palestinian relatives in the West Bank, confronted President Biden Tuesday in Michigan over his support for Israel, reportedly sharing a message similar to her recent House speech.
As long as the message from Washington is that our military support for Israel is unconditional, Netanyahu's extremism, right-wing government will continue to expand settlements, continue to demolish homes, and continue to make the prospects for peace impossible.
The White House announced Wednesday President Biden spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu.
The president conveyed to the prime minister that he expected a significant de-escalation today on the path to a ceasefire.
Graham described Biden's Israel response as uneven and also criticized his plans to rejoin the Iran nuclear deal.
Why would you go back into a nuclear deal with the largest state sponsor of terrorism?
Pointing to Iran's role in the current attacks on Israel.
Without Iran's support for Hamas, there would be no 3,500 rockets.
As the situation continues in Israel, Senate Republicans agreed that until Hamas stops targeting Israeli civilians, there should be no ceasefire. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN.